The planet Vera 9 was not meant for life. Its skies boiled with green lightning, and its air shimmered with radiation storms that melted steel. Nothing moved there, nothing human at least, but one small mining outpost still blinked faintly in the endless dark. Inside it, a lonely man named Elias Grant sat listening to static. He had been alone for 327 days. Earth Command had forgotten about this place after the trade wars. His job was to keep the old reactors stable, send daily logs, and not lose his mind. He was doing fine until that night. A weak signal broke through the static. "Help, crash. Oxygen low, please." Elias froze. The voice was soft, trembling, and not human. He increased the gain and the message came again, clearer this time. "This is Lyra Venn of the Aurelian Medical Fleet. I crashed near the equator zone. Anyone receiving, please respond." Elias blinked in disbelief. An Aurelian, the same alien race humans had fought 10 years ago. The war that cost billions of lives. Every part of his training said ignore it. But the voice, the desperation cut through him. He grabbed his jacket and oxygen mask. "Hang on, whoever you are. I'm coming." Outside, the wind screamed like a dying machine. The sand glowed faintly with static charge as he drove his crawler across the rocky plain. His scanner beeped, a faint distress beacon buried under metal debris. He jumped out, struggling against the wind, and began pulling panels aside. Beneath them was a silver-skinned alien woman, her breathing shallow, her suit torn. Her eyes, pale blue with gold streaks, opened weakly. "You human," she whispered. "Yeah, name's Elias," he said. "You picked the wrong planet to crash on." He lifted her carefully, ignoring the heat warning flashing on his visor. Her skin burned cold like ice left too long in vacuum. She tried to speak but passed out. He brought her back to the outpost and laid her on the medical bench. His hands shook as he removed her cracked helmet. She looked peaceful, almost fragile, like carved glass. The medical scanner blinked red, radiation poisoning. He didn't have alien medicine, but he had instincts. He used the decontamination pod, mixed human nanogel with his remaining plasma serum, and prayed it wouldn't kill her. Hours passed. Then her breathing slowed, steadied. When she finally opened her eyes again, her first words were a whisper. "Why did you save me?" Elias looked at her, half smiling. "Because no one deserves to die alone." Lyra blinked, confused. "Your kind. Hates us." He chuckled softly. "Guess I missed that memo." For days she remained weak. He brought her food, synthetic broth mostly, and adjusted the outpost's air filters so she could breathe. She didn't trust him at first. She would stare quietly while he worked, but when he coughed from radiation exposure, she stood and took his wrist. "You are sick," she said. "Let me help." He watched her place her glowing hands over his chest. Warm light spread through him, his pain faded. It was the first time in years he had felt another person's touch. That night they sat by the small heater as stormlight flashed outside. "My ship was a medical vessel," she said softly. "We were on a peace mission. We wanted to help rebuild after your wars. Pirates attacked. I crashed here. Guess fate wanted us to meet," Elias said. "Fate," she repeated, tasting the word. "Humans believe in such strange things." He smiled. "It keeps us alive." Lyra tilted her head. "You are not afraid of me?" "Should I be?" "I am Aurelian," she said. "Our people once called yours invaders." "Then maybe we can start with something new," he replied. "Like friends?" Her eyes softened for the first time. "Friends," she whispered, as if the word itself was a fragile treasure. Outside, lightning split the sky, but inside the outpost, among broken machines and empty silence, two souls from different worlds shared warmth and hope. Before sleeping, Elias looked at the stars through the cracked window. Somewhere up there was Earth. Somewhere, maybe, people still remembered him. But for now, he didn't care. Because tonight, he wasn't alone. And deep inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Days passed on Vera 9, and the storms never really stopped. But inside that lonely outpost, something gentle had begun to grow. Elias repaired what he could. Air filters, heaters, comm arrays, and Lyra watched him closely, fascinated by how patient humans could be with broken things. He wasn't strong or fast like her kind, but he had persistence. When a tool jammed, he'd mutter, "You and I both need fixing," and she would laugh softly, the sound like wind chimes in a metal room. Repairing hope, Lyra slowly regained her strength. Her silver skin lost its dull tone. Her hair shimmered again under the dim lights. She began helping him with repairs, using her alien knowledge to reroute the damaged systems. "Your circuits are messy," she said one evening. "You should see my handwriting," Elias replied. For the first time in months, the outpost echoed with laughter. They started working side by side. He'd pass her tools she'd never seen. She'd show him how to stabilize an energy conduit using harmonic pulses. Their worlds were different, yet somehow their minds fit perfectly together. 2 stories, one fire one night. As the storm outside softened to a quiet hum, they sat near the heater, sharing dried food. Lyra studied the flickering flames with curiosity. "You humans use fire for comfort," she said. "We use light for healing. But they both warm the soul." Elias nodded. "Yeah, fire's ancient for us. Reminds us we survived the dark." He looked at her and smiled faintly. "Guess I'm still doing that." She turned to him. "You miss your people?" He hesitated. "Not really the people. Just the noise. The smell of rain. Someone saying good morning. I used to think silence was peace. Now I know it's a slow kind of death." Lyra's eyes softened. "You are more honest than most humans I've met." Elias smirked. "You've met one," she smiled back. "Then you are the kindest one I know." The room fell quiet again. Not the heavy kind of silence, but the peaceful one. The kind shared between 2 souls who didn't need words anymore. Lessons from different worlds over the next week. She began teaching him her ways. The Aurelian art of resonance, how emotions could tune energy, how even machines responded to living will. He couldn't quite do it right. His hands would tremble, his mind too distracted. But she guided him patiently, placing her hand over his. "Feel the current," she whispered. "It listens if you speak kindly." Her voice was calm, melodic. For a moment, the humming power core pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He looked up at her, amazed. "You just made a reactor feel emotions," she smiled. "Everything in the universe listens to kindness, Elias. Even machines." Later, he showed her something human, a tiny sketchbook filled with drawings. Old habit. He had drawn the sky, mountains, even her sleeping in the med pod, peaceful and glowing. Lyra turned the pages, awestruck. "You see the world in color, even here in darkness." He shrugged. "Guess I paint what I miss." When she reached the last page, her breath caught. He had drawn them both, standing under the stars, holding hands. The stars formed a halo around her. Below he had written, "2 worlds, 1 sky." She looked at him silently for a long time. Then she whispered, "On my world we call this bond Ilaran, when 2 souls find each other across impossible distance." "And what happens after they find each other?" he asked softly. "They never forget," she replied. A fragile peace. By the 10th day, the storm sensors began to stabilize. Lyra's ship could soon be repaired enough to send a signal. Yet Elias found himself stalling, fixing the same wire twice, pretending to need her help longer. He didn't want her to leave. And deep down she didn't want to either. "You will be free soon," he said one evening, forcing a smile. "And you?" she asked. "I'll stay. Someone's got to keep this rock from falling apart." She frowned. "You could come with me. The Aurelians need engineers. And friends," he laughed. "Your people would throw me out the airlock." But she shook her head. "Not if I told them what I've seen. Not if they knew there are still humans like you." He looked away, uncertain. The thought of leaving everything behind, his orders, his ghosts, felt heavy. But the idea of her leaving felt worse. The first touch before he could answer, the outpost alarm beeped, a proximity alert. Something moved out there, far beyond the ridge. Lyra froze, her eyes narrowing. "That signal? It's not natural." Elias checked the radar, static spikes, multiple signatures. "Could be debris," he said. She shook her head slowly. "No, it's them." Her tone carried fear. "Who's them?" Elias asked. Lyra whispered, almost trembling. "The scavenger drones. They hunt survivors. They will find us." The wind outside began to rise again, the storm returning with vengeance. Inside, Elias stood still, staring at her glowing eyes filled with dread. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, that choice to stand beside her, would decide both their fates. "Then we fight," he said quietly. "You'll die," she warned. "Maybe," he said. "But you won't." And as the storm howled once more, the fragile bond between two worlds turned into something stronger, something worth dying for. The air on Vera 9 was never still, but that night even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Elias stood near the radar console, eyes locked on the screen. Dots, dozens of them, blinked across the horizon. 30 signatures, he muttered. No, Lyra said softly, her voice trembling. 30 drones. And one carrier. Her hands tightened around the edge of the table. The glow from her skin flickered like candlelight. She looked terrified. Those aren't just scavengers, she said. They're seekers. They harvest survivors for interrogation. Or worse. Then we make sure they don't harvest anything, Elias said, forcing calm. He grabbed his plasma rifle, its barrel old and scarred from years of neglect. Lyra caught his wrist. You can't fight them. You don't have the weapons, the armor, the shield frequencies. What I have, he cut in, is this base. And you? He smiled faintly. And I've survived worse. Preparing for the impossible, they worked through the night. Elias set up old defense turrets half-functional from the last war. Lyra recalibrated the energy shields, using her alien resonance to strengthen the barrier lines. Together they built traps, EMP charges, pressure mines, and decoy transmitters. Each time he stumbled, she steadied him. Each time she faltered, he smiled and said, We've got this. At one point, while soldering a broken coil, Elias asked quietly, Why are they after you? Lyra hesitated. Because I carry something they fear. A cure, he frowned. A cure for what? She looked away. For hate. She explained that her ship had been part of an interspecies research team, a coalition project meant to end the endless wars by altering the biochemical fear response between species. Her data core contained the prototype formula. If the Seekers destroyed it, peace itself would vanish. You mean you're carrying the hope of 2 galaxies, Elias said. And you risk your life for me, she whispered. That's irrational. Yeah, he said, smiling. That's humanity for you. A night before war, when the preparations were done, they sat together by the heater, just like before, only now the silence felt heavier. Outside, lightning painted the horizon with green fire. Inside, the hum of generators sounded like a heartbeat counting down time. Elias, Lyra said quietly, when this is over, if we survive, will you come with me? He looked at her. Her eyes shimmered in the low light, filled with something he couldn't name. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to believe there would be an after. But he only said, Let's make sure you live to ask me again. She smiled sadly. You humans always answer with hope. He leaned back against the wall. It's our only currency. For a long moment they just sat there. She reached out and took his hand, fingers cold and trembling. He didn't pull away. If we die tomorrow, she whispered, I want you to know. You changed my idea of what humans are. He looked at her, eyes soft. You changed what I thought aliens were. For the first time since he'd met her, she laughed, a sound like silver bells. But behind that laughter, they both knew the truth. Tomorrow would break them. The storm arrives by dawn. The first explosion shook the ground. The carrier had arrived. Elias ran to the command deck. Through the dust-choked window, he saw the drones descending, metal wings slicing through the acid clouds, red sensors glowing like eyes of hunger. They're scanning for your DNA, he shouted. Then I'll mask it, Lyra replied. She closed her eyes, chanting softly, her aura expanding, flickering like liquid light. For a moment, the drones hesitated, confused. Then one fired. The outpost shook. Sparks flew. Elias rolled behind a console as fire burst across the wall. Shields dropping, he yelled. Rerouting power. She cried back, her hands glowing bright. They worked as one. She channeled energy into the generators while he manually targeted the nearest drone and fired. The beam struck, tearing through its wing. It crashed in a burst of flame. Elias pumped his fist, shouting, "One down!" But there were 29 more. Lyra screamed as the next blast tore through the roof. She was thrown back. Elias ran to her, pulled her up, blood streaking his cheek. "You okay?" "Yes," she gasped. "But they will breach soon." He looked at her, chest heaving. Then his expression hardened. "Then we don't wait for them." He opened the manual override for the turrets, gritting his teeth. "Let's show them what a broken human outpost can do. The human who wouldn't run hours passed like minutes." The outpost turned into a fortress of fire. Drones fell one after another, but each loss brought more. The carrier ship's shadow loomed overhead like a mountain made of steel. Lyra's strength was fading. Her light dimmed. Elias's rifle overheated. His armor cracked and his breath came ragged. But every time he looked at her, he found another reason to keep going. Then, silence. The radar blinked. Only one signal remained, the carrier core. A reactor-sized heart of destruction charging up for one final strike. Lyra whispered, "If that fires, the whole planet will burn." Elias grinned weakly. "Guess we'd better stop it then." She stared at him, her voice trembling. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious right before doing something stupid." He turned to her, eyes steady. "You've got the cure, Lyra. You've got a future. Let me buy it for you." Before she could stop him, he pressed his hand against her shoulder and smiled. "You once told me everything listens to kindness," he said. "So listen to me now. Live." And then he was gone, running into the storm. The sky split open as he disappeared into the chaos, leaving Lyra standing in the doorway, her heart breaking with every step he took. For the first time in her long life, she understood what humans meant when they said sacrifice. The storm had turned the sky into liquid fire. Lightning tore through the black clouds and the ground trembled as the seeker carrier descended, a monstrous shape made of steel and hunger. Elias ran toward it, his suit tearing in the wind, every step burning through the toxic dust. His oxygen gauge flashed red, but he didn't slow down. Behind him, the outpost, his home, their refuge, was collapsing. He could hear Lyra's voice crackling through the comm. "Elias, stop. You'll die if you go near that reactor." "Yeah," he said, breathless. "That's the point." The humans' plan, he reached the wrecked valley where the carrier core pulsed like a dying sun. Massive drones guarded it, scanning for survivors. Elias hid behind a twisted beam clutching the remote detonator. His last invention, half broken, half mad. He whispered to himself, "You've got one job left, old man. Make it count." In his helmet display, Lyra's vitals flashed, weak but alive. That was enough. He crawled closer, every movement agony. The drones turned, red eyes slicing through the darkness. He fired once, twice. Explosions lit the valley like stars being born and dying all at once. He ran for the core. Sparks rained down. His suit alarm screamed, "Radiation critical." Then he reached the reactor door and saw the access panel. Alien tech, smooth and humming with power. He couldn't hack it, but he could overload it. The final transmission inside the outpost, Lyra's hands shook as she fought to keep the comm open. "Elias, listen to me. I can reroute the shield to protect you if you just wait," he interrupted softly. "Lyra, you remember that sketch I made? The one under the stars?" She froze. "Yes, keep it," he said. "That's me. That's my world." Tears welled in her bright blue eyes. "Don't say goodbye." "I'm not," he said, "just turning the lights off for a while." She slammed her fist against the console. "You humans are insane." He laughed weakly. "Took you long enough to notice." The reactor, he climbed up the access ladder, coughing blood inside his helmet. The wind screamed around him. Below, the core pulsed, beautiful, deadly. It reminded him of a heartbeat. He opened the manual conduit, exposing glowing cables. One wrong move and he'd vaporize instantly. He reached for the plasma cell at his belt, the same one Lyra had modified for the outpost shields. Her touch was still on it, faintly glowing with resonance light. "Guess you're saving me one last time," he muttered. He jammed it into the control port. The energy flared white hot. Warning lights exploded across the panel. Core overload initiated. "There we go," he said, smiling weakly. "Now A beam struck his side. One of the remaining drones had spotted him. The blast threw him against the railing. Pain surged like fire through his ribs. He screamed but dragged himself back up, using the railing for balance. He was out of time. The goodbye. The comm crackled again. Lyra's voice, broken, pleading. "Elias, please. I can come to you. I can heal you. Don't do this." He took off his cracked helmet, breathing in the toxic air. It felt like acid on his lungs, but he wanted to see the sky one last time. "You said your people look for light among the dark," he whispered. "Be that light, Lyra." He pressed the detonator. "Elias, no!" The world vanished in a blaze of white, the light that changed the sky. The explosion was silent at first. Then came a roar that split the heavens. The carrier disintegrated, torn apart by its own reactor chain. Every drone in the sky dropped lifeless into the storm. From orbit, the blast was visible, a blooming light over a forgotten world. Inside the escaping pod, Lyra screamed as the shockwave hurled her into the clouds. Her tears floated in zero gravity, glittering like small stars. She pressed her hands against the glass, watching as the outpost, their outpost, disappeared in the fire. "Elias," she cried. "Come back, please." Only silence answered her. The aftermath hours later, her pod drifted in space. Alarms beeped softly. She stared at the ruined planet below, a scar of light still glowing where he had stood. Her voice was barely a whisper now. "You said kindness echoes forever." "I hear it, Elias, I swear I do." She closed her eyes, clutching the small sketchbook he had given her, the one with the two of them standing beneath the stars. Outside her pod window, one tiny piece of debris floated by, a metal tag burned and half melted. The engraving still visible, E. Grant, human engineer, for duty, for hope. Lyra pressed it to her chest and whispered, "No, not for duty. For love." The stars outside seemed to shimmer brighter, as if the universe itself had paused to remember the man who refused to abandon a friend. Space was silent. For weeks after the explosion on Vera 9, only drifting debris remained, cold, weightless reminders of a human who refused to leave a friend behind. Lyra's escape pod had been found by an Aurelian patrol ship 2 days later. When they pulled her out, she was unconscious, clutching a burned metal tag in one hand and a small sketchbook in the other. She wouldn't let go of either. When she woke, she was surrounded by her own kind, medics, officers, curious eyes. But her first word wasn't a report or a command. It was a name. Elias. Returned to the living months passed. Lyra healed, though her heart never did. She returned to her people, the Aurelian Council, and presented what remained of the Cure Project, the formula Elias had died to protect. The data core had survived the explosion, shielded by his quick modifications. "The human sacrificed himself for this?" one of the counselors asked, disbelief in his tone. "No," Lyra said quietly. "He sacrificed himself for hope." Her voice carried through the chamber, calm yet burning. She explained how a lone human engineer, abandoned and forgotten by his own world, had chosen compassion over fear. How he had stood beside an alien he'd been taught to hate, and died so she could live. The hall fell silent. In that silence, something changed. Legacy of a human heart. Weeks later, the Aurelians and the Terran Union met for the first time in over a decade, not as enemies but as possible allies. At the center of the peace talk stood Lyra, wearing a silver badge engraved with human letters, E. Grant. Every time she spoke, her words carried the echo of that lonely outpost, of the man who believed kindness could outlive death. The cure he protected was completed using his own blood sample, preserved in the medpod logs. It neutralized the biochemical fear toxin that triggered aggression between species. For the first time in centuries, real peace was possible. When the formula was approved, Lyra made one final request to the Intergalactic Registry. "Name the first new peace station after him," she said softly. "After who?" "Elias Grant, the human who showed me that love and courage are not bound by species," they agreed. And so, orbiting the rebuilt world of Vera 9, a new beacon began to glow. Its name, Outpost Elias. The message in the stars years later. Lyra stood alone on the observation deck of that station. She wore a long white uniform, her rank insignia now a symbol of unity between worlds. Her hair shimmered like moonlight, and in her hand she still held that sketchbook. Edges worn, pages yellowed. She opened to the last page. The drawing Elias had made, 2 figures under a sea of stars holding hands, was faded but still visible. Below it, his handwriting read, 2 worlds, 1 sky. Her eyes welled up as she whispered, "You were right, Elias. We did it. Humanity and Aurelia finally share the same sky." Behind her, through the glass, a new star shone brighter than all others, a beacon positioned exactly where Vera 9's explosion had occurred. Astronomers had named it Grant's star, but Lyra simply called it him. She pressed her fingers to the glass, her reflection merging with the star's light. You once said kindness echoes forever, she whispered. I hear it every day. A story that traveled across galaxies on Earth decades later. Children studied the history of the Elias Accord, the peace treaty between humans and Aurelians. In one museum stood a small display, a cracked helmet, a metal tag, and a sketchbook preserved behind glass. The inscription read, "He was just one man." But one man was enough. Visitors often asked about the star seen above the exhibit, a glowing point of light that never dimmed. Scientists explained it as a residual plasma echo from the explosion on Vera 9, but storytellers, they said it was something else. They said it was the light of a human who refused to die quietly. The final scene back on Outpost Elias. Lyra stood on the deck as young cadets passed by, humans and Aurelians together, laughing, training, dreaming. She smiled softly, remembering the man who had once told her jokes about broken engines and bad coffee. He would have liked this, she said to herself. A young human cadet approached her. Commander Lyra? They say you knew him, the one the station's named after. Was he really that brave? She looked at the boy, his bright eyes full of wonder. No, she said with a gentle smile. He was just human. And sometimes, that's the same thing. The cadet nodded, touched. As he walked away, Lyra turned back toward the window, the star still gleaming in the endless night. She whispered one last time, her voice trembling with peace. You gave your life so I could see the stars again, and I never stopped looking. The camera pans out, showing her silhouette against the shining star named Elias, the eternal symbol of courage, kindness, and love that reached beyond worlds. Moral, in the cold void of space, it wasn't strength or power that saved two worlds, and it was a single act of compassion. Because sometimes the smallest light can outshine the darkest war.